My name is Jeff Coker. I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences here at Shenandoah University. On behalf of the faculty and administration here at the university, welcome to our campus. I'm going to try to make this introduction really brief, but just say a couple of things. And I don't want to steal Sean's thunder because he's gonna quote me from this morning, but just suffice to say that we at the university, and particularly in liberal arts here, are just beyond thrilled with what has happened here in Winchester over the last several months. This festival, which is only the beginning, I think, of a long relationship between the university and 1455. We spend our lives here on the campus trying to inculcate into students an appreciation for the creative arts, creative expression, the written word, and try to frame for them that a true liberal arts-based education means that this kind of work, this kind of consideration, this kind of deliberation will be part of your life for a lifetime. And that the kind of work that's done in creative writing and reading of works of literature is not just something that you do in a classroom, but something that should become a part of your lives. And I said this morning that one of the things that makes me so excited about this is that we can frame for our students, as we begin to develop this relationship, that this is something that people do, like to normalize, that people read books. That people write, that this is something that happens in our culture. And given where we are in the world today, I think this is so much needed, both here in Winchester and across the country. So just suffice to say, we're thrilled to be hosting this event. I'm going to introduce Sean and then allow Sean to introduce our authors for the night. I'm just so pleased that both of you are here. I'll just say this, that the first time I met Sean, the first thought I thought was like, okay, this is this really bright, happy, friendly guy with really cool glasses.
And shoes, cool
and shoes. I'm not really sure what he wants, but I'll hear him out. But the more we started talking, the synergy, the shared commitment to what I was describing before became obvious. And so we're thrilled to have you in Winchester. We're thrilled to have you on our campus, and I suspect we'll be seeing a lot more of you on the campus. And so please join me in welcoming to the podium Sean Murphy.
Thank you for that, Jeff. And thank you for this. First and foremost, this doesn't happen without Jeff Coker saying, I want to help, I want to be involved, I want to make this happen. So on business and personal levels, Jeff, and I will quote you, because now I'm going to quote you. On our panel this morning, he said when we first met, it was like what is the movie? The Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
You had me at hello, but it was mutual. And I think partly because there was a synergy, there was a genuine appreciation of a love of the liberal arts, a love of humanities, and an appreciation of we all need to be involved in moving this ball up the hill. I think without getting political, suffice it to say, our world right now needs more communication, more empathy, more discussion, more celebration of what we're all trying to do, whatever we're trying to do. And without people like Jeff and Amy, and without people showing up for the event, it doesn't mean anything. So I want to thank all of you. I want to thank Jeff for making this beautiful building available. As a humble founder of a nonprofit, again, you can throw a party or you can imagine a party, but if you don't have people that are willing to buy into what you're doing, it's just not going to happen. So I was joking earlier, but it's really the truth. I've talked so much this weekend, hearing myself, I'm done. I don't want to, hearing myself talk, I'm done. So I will say this, I've been very gratified, like the fact that the community came out, the local community supported this is extremely gratifying and proves that we, and I say that, we are doing something important, something that's meaningful, but without the support, without people literally coming out, it doesn't mean anything. We've had writers from New York, we have a writer from Nebraska, we have writers that are local, and that's what this is all about. But without that support, this doesn't mean anything. But I will say, I'm happy, I'm gratified that we had an outcome, we had people come out, but a few people, or maybe more than a few, have said, how did this happen? And I said, well, it's easy. You find the right venue, you find the right partners, you find a lot of interesting, brilliant people, and the rest takes care of itself. So it's facetious, but it's also true, right? So this is not about me. This is even really not about 1455. This is about the fact that regardless of where we are in the world, this is proving that community is important. We all want to hear brilliant writers and academics do their thing. We need more of this. I think we'd all agree. So there's no agenda. I want it to be a party. I hope you all have had fun this weekend. I'm profoundly grateful that you've all come from wherever you came from to come out here. I hope you continue to carry the torch for us. I want you to enjoy your meals. And personally, I'm very happy that we're about to have two brilliant, on fire novelists about to read from their work. And I'll let my good friend and advisory board member, Beth Ann, introduce them. But suffice it to say, you're about to hear some really good writing. But I'd be remiss, and I'm going to point out, I'm happy that my dad is here, Jack Murphy. So talk about if it's not for him, this doesn't happen, like literally. My wife Heather, who without her support, none of this happens.
Absolutely.
I said it earlier, but I'll say it again. My brother and friend Justin Aaron, who when I went up to Noepe Center for Literary Arts at Martha's Vineyard, I fell in love with the idea of building community and the idea, which again, and forgive me because I said this earlier, but for those of you that didn't hear it, I've written, I've done it, I've done that stuff, but what I had forgotten was how critical and important it was to be around kindred spirits, and I hadn't experienced that since I was in grad school. So it had been about 20 years, and when I went to the Noepe Center, it reawakened this realization of we all are in this battle, and most of us writers, whatever level of experience or success, we need support, we need love, we need camaraderie, we need networking. And the experience I had at Noepe was transformative, and that led to this. So if anyone wants to thank me or celebrate what I've done, make sure you go up to Justin Aaron and say, you did it first. He's on our advisory board, and he's my brother. I love him, and I'm glad he's here. He came down from Martha's Vineyard. And my other brother, Ben Mayrides, is here. If you came to the event this weekend and said, this is pretty professional. Not this guy, that guy. Ben's, yeah. I said it earlier, but it's the truth. It would have been, and maybe it would have been cool, but it would have been a very analog experience. Like, just come in and do your thing. Ben gave us the structure and the support and made the trains run on time. So thank you for that, brother, and I love you. That's really all I have to say. I'm the reason I'm doing this, the reason I think any of us do any of the things we do, is we want to celebrate and commiserate and talk and communicate, and I think this is what's happening. I will reiterate, Jeff, thank you for your unbelievable generosity and faith. Again, I could have thrown this party in a field and it would have been cool, but to be in an amazing building on a campus.
With air conditioning.
Well, so when you envision a literary festival, like, I'm gonna do it in the late July and hopefully it's 100 degrees. What could go wrong? So having a modern, beautiful building where people can come together and enjoy drink and food is very meaningful. And I think, I've talked a lot about the microcosms, but this is a microcosm of what I'm, in my own humble and very modest way, trying to achieve. It's an opportunity to come together. Again, there's no need to talk about politics, just to come together and celebrate the fact that we're all doing what we do, but we should stop and communicate and celebrate. We're all on this journey together. So please enjoy, eat, drink, and be merry. And with that, I'm genuinely happy to turn the mic over and listen to some brilliant writers do their thing. We're gonna hear a reading and then we're gonna eat dinner. So with that said, mic drop. Thank you very much for being here.
Talent. Oh, I thought you were, would you sit there so that everyone can see you, and then I'll sit here because no one needs to look at me. Good evening, friends. It's me again. I wish we had more mics, but we don't. So I'm going to have Julia Phillips and Angie Kim come up for their readings, but then the three of us are going to talk a bit. We're going to have a very brief Q&A. It won't take a long time. I know everyone would like to get to dinner, and I appreciate your patience with anything I might say. However, for anyone who is here and hasn't seen or heard me yet, Beth Ann Patrick, very proud advisory board member for 1455 Literary Arts. So thrilled to take part of this. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Justin. All of this is wonderful because I know from seeing many other book and literary festivals take flight over the years, how difficult this can be and how seamless this experience has been. So namaste to everyone who has taken part. Really, you've made it amazing. And so what I'm going to do is have our authors read brief sections from their novels, and let me just tell you a little bit about each of them. Angie Kim, author of Miracle Creek, which has been just a runaway success, yes, is a debut author who is going to set the world on fire. She has other blurbs, but I mean, come on, Scott Turow, what more do you need? This is a courtroom drama of the first rank, and it is also a story that is set sort of in our, well, it's not based on Great Falls necessarily. More around here, but it is set in our region. And so then I'm going to introduce Julia Phillips, whose debut novel, Disappearing Earth, is set in a completely different place on the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia. Well, not Russia, but actually, yeah, Russia. It's way, way far away from where Miracle Creek takes place. So they're both going to read, and I think after you hear what they're reading, you're going to be so intrigued, and I hope that the questions I then ask briefly will help illuminate your experience and make you want to read both novels if you haven't already. And if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? So we're going to go alphabetically. Angie, you're up first.
Thank you so much, Beth Ann, and thank you, Sean, and thank you to 1455 and Winchester. And Winchester actually is really special to me, and it's one of the few towns that's not a fictional town like Miracle Creek that is actually named in my book. I actually have like a little thing about a fire chief from Winchester discussing an arson that was in Winchester. So anyway, I'm just going to tell you a little brief elevator pitch about Miracle Creek and then do 2 short passages. So Miracle Creek is a literary courtroom drama about a Korean immigrant family and a young single mother who's on trial for murdering her 8-year-old child on the autism spectrum. It takes place in the fictional town of Miracle Creek, Virginia, which is fictional and but is sort of around here, and the way that it's geographically described could be very well be right around here. And it's a place where a Korean immigrant family, the Yu family, resides, and they have something called the Miracle Submarine, which is not a real submarine. It's something called a hyperbaric oxygen therapy chamber, or HBOT, which is a real thing. It's used in hospitals for things like carbon monoxide poisoning and burns and things like that. But it's also used experimentally as a treatment for things ranging from infertility and autism to cerebral palsy and Lyme disease. And so at the beginning of the novel, someone deliberately sets fire by the pure oxygen tanks that are outside this chamber, killing 2 people who are inside. And then we fast forward a year, and we hear from 7 different perspectives of characters as they go through the murder trial, which is a 4-day trial. And so in one sense, it is a whodunit, a howdunit, a whydunit, as we try to figure out who, why, and how did someone set this fire, or a group of people. But hopefully, more than that, it is an exploration into the lives of these families. The Korean immigrant family who's living in a very isolated part of rural Virginia, sort of somewhat close to here. And then also the families of children who are on the autism spectrum and cerebral palsy, and the special needs parenting community. So a couple of very quick chapters, and because there are 7 different POVs, I thought I would read from 2 different chapters. One is the incident, which is the very beginning. The incident, Miracle Creek, Virginia, Tuesday, August 26, 2008. My husband asked me to lie. Not a big lie. He probably didn't even consider it a lie, and neither did I at first. It was such a small thing what he wanted. The police had just released the protesters, and while he stepped out to make sure they weren't coming back, I was to sit in his chair. Cover for him, the way coworkers do as a matter of course, the way we ourselves used to at the grocery store, while I ate or he smoked. But as I took his seat, I bumped against the desk, and the certificate above it went slightly crooked, as if to remind me that this wasn't a regular business, that there was a reason he'd never left me in charge before. Pak reached over me to straighten the frame, his eyes on the English lettering. Pak U, Miracle Submarine, LLC, Certified Hyperbaric Technician. He said, eyes still on the certificate, as if talking to it, not to me, everything's done. The patients are sealed in, the oxygen's on. You just have to sit here. He looked at me. That's it. I looked over the controls, the unfamiliar knobs and switches for the chamber we painted baby blue and placed in this barn just last month. What if the patients buzz me? I said. I'll say you'll be right back, but no, they can't know I'm gone. If anyone asks, I'm here. I've been here the whole time. But if something goes wrong, and what could go wrong? Pak said, his voice forceful, like a command. I'll be right back and they won't buzz you. Nothing will happen. He walked away, as if that was the end of the matter. But at the doorway, he looked back at me. Nothing will happen, he said again, softer. It sounded like a plea. As soon as the barn door banged shut, I wanted to scream that he was crazy to expect nothing to go wrong on this day, of all days, when so much had gone wrong. The protesters, their sabotage plan, the resulting power outage, the police. Did he think so much had already happened that nothing more could? But life doesn't work that way. Tragedies don't inoculate you against further tragedies, and misfortune doesn't get sprinkled out in fair proportions. Bad things get hurled at you in clumps and batches, unmanageable and messy. How could he not know that after everything we've been through? So we fast forward a year and 2 days, and this is from the perspective of a Pak Yu, who is the husband of the narrator that we just heard from, who is the father of the Korean immigrant family. Pak Yu was a different person in English than in Korean. In a way, he supposed, it was inevitable for immigrants to become child versions of themselves, stripped of their verbal fluency and, with it, a layer of their competence and maturity. Before moving to America, he'd prepared himself for the difficulties he knew he'd experience. The logistical awkwardness of translating his thoughts before speaking, the intellectual taxation of figuring out words from context, the physical challenge of shaping his tongue into unfamiliar positions to make sounds that didn't exist in Korean. But what he hadn't known, hadn't expected, was that this linguistic uncertainty would extend beyond speech and, like a virus, infect other parts, his thinking, demeanor, his very personality itself. In Korean, he was an authoritative man, educated and worthy of respect. In English, he was a deaf, mute idiot, unsure, nervous, and inept, a pabo. This was the thing he regretted most about their move to America, the shame of becoming less proficient, less adult than his own child. He'd expected this to happen eventually, had seen how children and parents switch places as the parents age, their minds and bodies reverting to childhood, then infancy, then non-being. But not for many years, and certainly not yet when Mary still had a foot in childhood. In Korea, he had been the teacher. But after his move, when he visited Mary's school, her principal had said, "Welcome, tell me, how are you liking Baltimore?" Pak smiled, nodded, and was deciding how to answer. Perhaps the smile nod had been enough. When Mary said, "He loves it here, running the store right by Inner Harbor, right, Dad?" The rest of the meeting, Mary continued speaking for him, answering questions directed his way, like a mother with her 2-year-old son.
What a joy it is to do an event with Angie. I have to tell you all that I am her biggest fan. I'm obsessed with this book, so I urge you, if you haven't read it, to read it immediately, and if you've already read it, to just read it again over and over again. That's what I like to do. I really want to echo everyone's thanks and just expressions of gratitude and community. It is so meaningful to be here in this group of writers and readers. It really is hope-giving and sustaining, and I'm really grateful to all be together to sort of feed each other with stories and then feed each other with food. This is a great thing. I'm going to read a little bit from my debut novel, Disappearing Earth, which is about 2 girls who go missing, 2 young sisters who go missing on the Kamchatka Peninsula, as Beth Ann said, in Russia, which is on the Bering Strait. It's by Alaska. And then how that disappearance affects the women and girls in their community. So we begin looking at the girls, and then every chapter after that moves us forward a month in their investigation, and it focuses on a different woman in their community. So I'm just going to read just a smidge from the beginning, just a couple of minutes. This is the start of the book. Sophia Sandals Off was standing at the water's edge. The bay snuck up to swallow her toes, gray salt water over bright skin. "Don't go out any farther," Alyona said. The water receded, Alyona could see under her sister's feet the pebbles breaking the curves of Sophia's arches, the sweep of grit left by little waves. Sophia bent to roll up her pant legs, and her ponytail flipped over the top of her head. Her calves showed flaking streaks of blood from scratched mosquito bites. Alyona knew from the firm line of her sister's spine that Sophia was refusing to listen. "You better not," Alyona said. Sophia stood to face the water. It was calm, barely touched by ripples that made the bay look like a sheet of hammered tin. The current got stronger as it pulled into the Pacific, leaving Russia behind for open ocean. But here it was domesticated. It belonged to them. Hands propped on narrow hips, Sophia surveyed it. The width of the bay, the mountains on the horizon, the white lights of the military installation on the opposite shore. The gravel under the sisters was made of chips from bigger stones. Alyona leaned against a block the size of a hiking backpack, and a meter behind her was the crumbling cliff face of St. Nicholas Hill. Water on one side, rock wall on the other. They had walked along the coast this afternoon until they found this patch, free of bottles or feathers, to settle. When seagulls landed nearby, Alyona chased them away with a wave of her arm. The whole summer had been cool, drizzly, but this August afternoon was warm enough to wear short sleeves. Sophia took a step out, and her heel went under. Alyona sat up. "So I said no." Her sister backed up. A gull flew over. "Why do you have to be such a brat?" "I'm not." "You are. You always are." "No," Sophia said, turning around. Her tipped-up eyes, thin lips, sharp jaw. Even the point of her nose annoyed Alyona. At 8 years old, Sophia still looked 6. Alyona, 3 years older, was short for her age, but Sophia was tiny all over, from waist to wrists, and sometimes acted like a kindergartner. She kept a row of stuffed animals at the foot of her bed, played pretend that she was a world-famous ballerina, couldn't fall asleep at night if she caught even one scene of a horror movie on the television. Their mother indulged her. Being born second had given Sophia the privilege of staying a baby all her life. Gaze fixed on a spot on the cliff far above Alyona's head, Sophia lifted one foot out of the water, pointed wet toes, and raised her arms to fifth position. She tipped and caught herself. Alyona shifted her seat on the stones. Their mother always tried to get Alyona to take her sister along to classmates' apartments, but these little misdeeds were exactly why she would not. Instead, they had spent their summer vacation alone with each other. While Sophia balanced, Alyona looked along the shore. A man was picking his way over the rocks. "Someone's coming," Alyona said. Her sister splashed one leg down and lifted the other. Sophia might not care who saw her act like an idiot, but Alyona, her forced companion, did. "Stop," Alyona said, more loudly, heating up in her mouth. "Stop!" Sophia stopped. So I'm going to skip forward a few pages. Alyona and Sophia end up meeting that man, and he's sprained his ankle on the path, on the rocks. So they help him to his car, and in thanks, he offers them a ride home, and they accept. So the next really short scene I'm going to read is when they're in the car with him. From the passenger seat, Alyona took the man's features apart, a wide nose and a mouth underneath that matched, short brown eyelashes, round chin. His body looked carved out of fresh butter. He was too heavy, probably. That must be why he had stepped clumsily on the shore. "Do you have a girlfriend?" asked Sophia. He laughed and shifted gears, accelerating up the hill. The car hummed underneath them. The bay drew away behind. "No, I don't." "And you're not married?" "Nope." He lifted his hand, fingers spread to show. Sophia said, "I saw already." "Clever thing," he said. "How old are you?" 8. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "And you're also not married, am I right?" Sophia giggled. Alyona turned to watch the road. His car was taller than their mother's sedan. She could look down on roof racks and along the pink lines of drivers' arms. People were sunburned after this one day of good weather. "Can I put the window down?" she asked. "I prefer the air conditioning. Straight through this intersection?" "Yes, please." The trees along the sidewalks were fat and green from this rainy summer. They passed ragged billboards on their left and concrete-paneled apartment buildings on their right. "Here," Alyona said. "Here." "Oh," she twisted in her seat. "You missed the turn." "You missed the turn," Sophia said from the back. "I want to take you to my place first," the man said. "I need a little more help."
Thank you both. And now something's whipping up out there. I know we only have one mic, so I'm going to take this out.
Yes.
And there we go. We can pass it around. Woo! So I will keep this short. But one of the things I wanted to talk to you both about is what it is like to be a woman writing a mystery / thriller that, and bear with me here, is not just focused on the women in the story, but is also told from a perspective that isn't a straight linear one. So I'd like to hear you both talk about that for a second. Anyone first?
So,
Wow.
So Julie and I, we're both debut authors, and we got to know each other because we're in the same debut authors group, along with Julie Langsdorf, who read earlier this afternoon. Woohoo! White Elephant. And one of the reasons why Julie and I have done some great events together, and I think we're slated to be on more events together later this year, is because our books are categorized as sort of literary mysteries in a way. And it's been interesting because it's not a standard mystery in the sense that I think one thing, I don't want to speak for both of us, so I'm going to hand the mic over to you in a second, but I think that for what I tried to do, and I think what Julia tried to do also as her fan, is use the mystery that's presented, that sort of forms the through action for the novel, as almost an excuse to get the readers and ourselves really interested in the subject matter and the world of the novel, but then use that to explore other people's lives, the lives of the people who are directly and indirectly affected by the tragedy that occurs in the beginning of the novel. And I think that in that way, in some ways, yours probably more than mine, Julia, it's almost a short story collection as well. And there are definitely aspects of my stories that are standalone stories that, you know, I've also used and things like that. Oh, okay, sorry. So anyway, and that's something that I really am interested in, and I hope that you are too. And I think that in a way that gives us a chance to help the readers who might be interested in solving the whodunit and the why, how done it part of the mystery, a way to get invested into these characters, and then a chance for us to really explore the lives of these characters and the themes of that.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah, thinking about community and thinking about characters, I think both of those C words were things that both of us really wanted to talk about and explore in our work. As you asked what it's like to be women, you know, writing these stories, and I think as women, as readers, and as writers, and I think that this is, I imagine, an experience that a lot of women here have had, but also an experience that we've all had as people that consume a lot of stories, as people that love to tell stories and are interested in them. A story of vulnerable people being hurt is something that we are presented with over and over and over again. And it's something that if we feel vulnerable, or in the ways that we feel vulnerable in our daily lives, as women, as people of color, as immigrants, as that, it is something that's constantly with us. It's presented in media, and it's also always there, sort of looming this threat behind us. And I think living with that sort of constant fear or threat, and then consuming those stories constantly, I think they do make you think a little bit differently about a whodunit or a whydunit. Because then you stop thinking about, oh, I'm going to tell the story of one victim, one perpetrator, one detective, and it starts to be, I'm going to tell the story, or try to explore through story, why this keeps happening. why we keep on trying to find these, what draws us to this story, what makes us perpetuate this story, what's going on in our communities, what's going on inside ourselves that makes this violence occur. And I think both of us really want to know, not just in an individual level, but also among the community, what's going on there that brings this violence out.
Yeah, and then one final thing on the, I will say about Julia's novel, which I completely love, but she has, you have 12 different POVs, right? 12 different stories, and they're all told from the perspectives of women in the community of Kamchatka who are directly affected or indirectly affected. And for me, I have 7 different POVs, and I think 5 of them are women and 2 of them are men. But one of the things that I have done is really taken care to present women as sort of the protagonists of the stories, like as actually active members in solving the mystery. For example, there are 2 lawyers, the prosecutor and the defense lawyer, and I will say, I think the defense lawyer, Shannon, is a totally badass litigator, and she's amazing in the courtroom, and she's exactly the kind of person that you would want to see.
Yeah.
Right. That I would have wanted to be. Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that it's actually one of these things that I'm not sure that we see enough of, is the actual investigators and the people who are responsible for being proactive and actually solving the mystery, and not only solving it, but then sort of advising the victims on how to proceed and advising the people, various people, how to proceed. Having those people be women, I think, is really important, especially now, and I think that's the kind of thing that, unfortunately, it's mostly the female authors, like, say, a Laura Lippman or Alafair Burke and people like that, who are women who put their detectives and their star attorneys and things like that as female characters. And I think that's really important because we haven't really seen that.
Absolutely, thank you, exactly. And I don't want to go on too much longer because we all need our dinner. But in terms of that, both of you put women in lots of different situations. Active situations, tenuous situations, dangerous situations, and situations that are complicated by sexual and gender politics, that are frustrating everywhere from this area, in Miracle Creek, which could be kind of this area, all the way to the very furthest point east we can think of in Kamchatka. And so let's talk again, just for a couple of minutes, about women in these novels taking back their agency. Not just taking back positions of power, but saying, I am not going to put up with this anymore. Is that a fair question?
That's a very fair question.
You go first.
It's really interesting to think about, I think, as writers and readers, women or people that we're usually presented with as victims as subjects and not objects, as people who are in control of their own narratives. Certainly, I think we do that by putting focus on characters and saying, this person's the center of this moment, this person's the center of this narrative, we're seeing this through this person's perspective, we're not seeing someone else looking at them or sort of perceiving them, we're in their mind and behind their eyes. I think that's one way that we do it narratively. I also think, it's interesting to think about women, sort of taking control of their lives. They're saying, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. It's a fascinating thing to write this literary fiction because, or, I would say both of us are trying to write realistic fiction. And we're telling stories that are made up and that we want to be more hopeful and more sort of shaped and more cohesive than maybe the sort of jumble and mess of our day-to-day lives. Yeah. I don't want to speak for anyone here and assume that your lives are a jumble and a mess, but mine often is. But also, to, even in fiction, in realistic fiction, you can't, if things are structurally wrong, or if things are sort of relationally messed up between you and someone else, you do not have the power to say, you know what, I'm gonna, everything's different now, and I'm going to change what's happening. Indeed, I would say.
That would be fantasy.
Yes, that would be fantasy. That would be a beautiful fantasy. And I think about, for example, the mothers in your book dealing with the constant pressure they're under to perform goodness or perform sacrifice as special needs parents, as members of a community, and someone saying, I don't want to speak for your characters or you, but someone saying as one of your characters, forget it, I'm not going to do this anymore. It doesn't actually remove that pressure. They're still under that pressure. The pressure is external, and I think both of us are trying to kind of figure out with our characters, okay, how much do you have the power to change or be different about, and how much is actually external conflict that you are sort of struggling your way through and trying to figure
Very
out.
good point.
And, you know, one thing that I think that we both are trying to do in our novels is have the characters say the truths that we all think, but don't
I would
feel
agree.
like we can. So one thing that I've talked a lot about in interviews and things like that that I'm really especially into, like, and proud of, is the fact that some of the mothers who are the characters in my novel, who are the mothers of special needs children and children with chronic illnesses, have shameful thoughts that we all do as parents, as people, and they actually say those out loud to each other in this darkened H-spot chamber, which I actually have personal experience with it with one of my kids. And in this very intense, darkened, confessional environment, the characters actually say things to each other about their lives. And they sort of discard this mask of the saintly mother, which I think is something that we have in our society that I feel very strongly is unfair, especially to women. I mean, no offense to fathers, but really fathers can be imperfect, and that's okay. Mothers have to be perfect. Mothers have to be saintly. Mothers can't think, oh, I don't like my child. You know, mothers can't think, I wish I could escape. I don't understand why I had children, even for a minute. And these fleeting, shameful thoughts that people have that I sort of gave voice to in my novel, and that's one thing that I feel like hopefully allows us to sort of start a dialogue about that I am happy that to have hopefully started a dialogue about.
Thank you both so much. And now I'm going to say we have ended this wonderful, I could go on, but thank you, Angie, thank you, Julia. And I don't know if Sean has any other words besides let's eat.
What else is there to say?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you both.